The cylinder heads are the correct mid-year heads. They use them on the late heads too. They're called open rocker heads. They have the baby jars on them, which is the coverings for the valve springs. The later ones went to a full tin covering, and these are the correct ones. They're very rare and they're very odd, but they're correct for the bikes. It has the correct skull dash, an original dash cover, original speedometer, then rebuilt, original oil pressure gauge, amp meter, original ignition switch, correct numbers on the switch, all real parts. Gas caps are even original. I paid a fortune for those. Cam cover is a 2-rivet can cover. That also is odd. They use those. That might even be a little bit earlier, but some of the mid bikes had that, I believe. This is what we'd call a mid-year 36 Knucklehead. And so some of the early parts could be on there. And this has a few of those, which is rare stuff. The rims are original Harley rims. The spokes are original Harley spokes that were taken out of the wheels, sent for cadmium plating, and then reinstalled. Correct early stepped hubs, which are the hubs for the 36. I think they went to 39 with the stepped hubs. The fenders are the small brace fenders with butterfly braces on the inside. These terms are terms that the Harley people would know, the average person would not. But it identifies them as early Knucklehead, or in the term early Knucklehead, that even applies to like pre-war Knucklehead, pre-World War II. But 36s have a lot of odd stuff that some of the other pre-war bikes don't have. And this particular bike, the toolbox is an original toolbox. The chain guard's an original original chain guard. The oil tanks, original oil tank. Fenders, gas tanks, dash, forks, wheels, brakes, and that's very difficult to find this stuff original because the stuff was rare to begin with, and most of it was, we lost a lot of stuff in the war effort because stuff was melted down or scrapped or what have you. So to have the pre-war bikes, to have the stuff survive, and to be able to get the stuff, it's very difficult, and it's also very expensive. The parts, if you broke the parts down on this bike, it would scare you in value. It has the correct M5 carburetor, crash bars original, even the oil lines and gas line are original lines that I was lucky enough to acquire. Correct 4-bolt transmission, the kicker cover, all real Harley, all the right stuff. Clutch pedal, brake pedal, and the mounts, they're right. The mud flap on the back of the fender, NOS, which means brand new from the day. The switches and the spirals on the handlebars are real Harley that have been reworked. The hardware, a lot of the hardware is original. That means nuts and bolts. A lot of it is original stuff that we reworked. You can buy kits for them. In the kits, the stuff is nice, it's correct, but we used original stuff where we could. Yeah, it's a great bike. I'm sad to have sold it, and I'm going to miss it. But I have others, and Tony's a great guy. I really enjoyed him and working with him. Good guy to end up with it. We did a lot of stuff together. The frame. You remember working on the frame?
Yeah, I remember it. It was in pretty bad shape.
Yeah, it was too. Yeah, straighten the handlebars.
Yeah.
Welding on the bars. Welding on sheet metal. The sheet metal was all needed attention.
Fabrication.
Fabrication, yeah. Did oil tank needed repairs? You did all the brazing on that.
Yeah.
Help with assembly. And one of the journeys with this bike in the beginning was a friend of ours, David Sarafan, had a basket case for sale, and a friend of his had it in Vermont. And so my dad and I went to Vermont to look at this basket case, which ended up being this bike. And we went there, and there was a pile of parts, and it was motor and transmission, was it wheels?
Yeah.
There was a fork. It was just a bunch of stuff, and it was a small fortune. And that, of course, that was, you know, years and years ago. And so we looked it over and we pawed it all over, and we spent probably an hour there or something, and more.
Yeah.
Probably 2 hours.
I says, you ain't gonna spend that much money on that.
He did say that,
And he goes, oh yeah.
I was telling him, yeah, we need this, we want this, and
The guy that was selling it was all smiles. He thought he made a good deal.
yeah, and it was a lot of money at the time. It was a lot of money,
Yeah.
and so we went back and forth about it, and we decided we weren't going to buy it, and we were going to leave. And when we went to leave, the guy who owned the stuff, who was selling it, he was brokering it actually, and his name was Rat. He was a good guy, and he decided that they wanted to sell it, and so we started negotiating again, and we went back and forth for another half an hour or something, and the stuff came home with us. Yeah, yeah, and then right after that, the frame came a little bit later from Johnny Godso.
Yeah.
And then we just started building it, and yeah.
I don't know, it seemed like it disappeared for a while and then it come back.
Yeah, well, we had so much other stuff going on in the shop.
Yeah, that's what it was, yeah.
Yeah, but there wasn't much on that bike that he didn't influence or was involved in. It looked pretty good for almost 90, right? Where the basket case came from was from David Serafan. And he had, and that was the story I told about the gentleman up in Vermont with my dad. That was all from David Serafan. That was the motor, the cylinders, the heads. A lot of that stuff was replaced later on with other parts, because you always upgrade when you're building something. If you get a chance to buy something that's better, you swap it out and then you sell the stuff that's lesser and you put the better stuff into place. But David Serafan, very influential with this bike and a lot of bikes. David's been a friend of mine for 30, almost 40 years. Super knowledgeable guy in the Harley world, written books, and a good friend. I've got a lot of history with David, and we trade now, you know, as old buddies, and I consider him a good friend.
Did you get any parts from David Wasserman?
Yeah, David Wasserman, this shift knob right here, the shift knob on the bike came from David Wasserman. And David Wasserman's another old bike friend. He probably won't even remember selling it to me. But yes, I've traded with him a long time. Another great guy, top shelf guy, David Wasserman. There's a handful of people that were very involved in parts. Jim Denny in New York, another longtime friend, very, very knowledgeable guy, great restoration guy. A lot of stuff came from him. Scott Grenier, local guy, did the striping, did a great job. Charlie Smith in Connecticut, he also real strong in the Harley world, sold us a lot of parts to this bike. Charlie's been around the stuff a long time. He was also good friends with my old partner, Johnny. Charlie's a good guy. Steve McPhillips in New York, he did some work for us, machining and what have you. I mentioned Mark Wall was real strong with information. Without him, the bike wouldn't be as good as it is. My buddy Moke, who's not here, I wish he was. He did a lot of help with assembly and stuff, just being around. A good old friend, Larry Spielvogel from New York City. Larry and I have been friends for pushing 40 years. He sold me some great parts to this bike. And it's hard to get parts out of him, I'll add that. John Pierce did the paint. John Pierce, again, his paint is nobody better. Yeah, and a lot of people in and out of the shop. You know, I'd catch them coming through. Hey, help me hold something. Help me. You know, and that stuff goes on all the time. But yeah.
Why do you recommend it never be started?
I don't recommend that. When Tony bought the bike with me, when we did the deal, he said it was going to a museum. And so if you're going to put something in a museum, especially old Harleys, if you run them, as soon as you start running them, they're unrestoring themselves. Leak oil, leak gas, whatever. No, the bike is certainly runnable. Everything on it is restored and done correctly. But the venue that he's going to put it into, it's probably better not to be run. Not that it couldn't be, but if you're gonna put something on display, once you run them, things change a little bit. But there's no issue with running it though.
So I'm going to ask you about a whole bunch of different parts, but before that, is there anything else that we should know about this bike before we get to that?
Just very rare bike, very rare bike with a lot of odd parts, and we've done our best to make the odd parts, to have them in the right spots, and to acquire original parts. There's very few reproduction parts in the bike, which is very difficult. I believe it to be a good quality restoration with original parts, original fenders, original frame, original gas tanks. The wheels are original, the motor, the transmission, the primaries, the dash, the headlight, tail light, even handlebars, and original parts, oil tank, brake parts, original parts. And that's saying a lot. And today there's a lot of pretty bikes that are built, but they build them with a lot of reproduction parts. This particular one, that's part of the timetable, the way it took so long, and to get to the level it's at. I've been working on Harleys since I was 17. Restored my first Harley when I was 17.
And what are the top 5 motorcycles in your mind you restored, and who owns them now?
Wow, that's tough. I've done quite a few of these early 36 Knuckleheads. I've done some great Indians, some 4-cylinder Indians. We did a 4-cylinder Indian for the U.S. Postal Service that ended up being on a stamp. That was kind of a cool bike. I don't know, a lot of them. Yeah, we've probably done, come over here. Yeah, just happens to be that we've got some advertising. These shirts, spin around the other way, spin around, come over here. Can you see that? There, right there.
Yeah.
He did that one.
Yeah, we did that one. That was done years ago. Cool, thanks, Steph. Yeah, that was done for a guy out of Manhattan, and he actually owned the bike in the Postal Service. I think they rented the bike from him to do the postal stamp.
That's actually really cool.
Yeah, it's a cool story. Yeah, that bike was a lot of fun.
Tell me a little history about HP Cycles.
HP Cycles was, years ago, I worked for a guy 30-something years ago doing vintage bikes in New Hampshire. And everything was real young then, and it was just getting going. The guy was a real smart guy. Things didn't work out for him. I was doing a lot of the work at his place, and then when that didn't work out, the people started calling us, and so I reeled my dad in, and he and we worked out of a 4-car garage for quite a few years, and we saved up some monies, and we built a facility which this is HP Cycles, and it was built just for restoring vintage bikes, and we've run it here for, well, pushing 30 years now. And the HP part of it, that's Harvey Paul, that's my father's name, and I thought that was a good tribute.
How many generations of the Paul family works with you?
My son and my dad and me, so there's 3 of us, yeah.
And I met your son and dad.
Yep, that's right, yep. Yeah, and there's a bunch of people around that have been around for years. The guy passed away, Don Heath, was a very good tech. We lost him a while back. A good friend that I worked with, John Godso, whose parts of this bike came from him. He was very involved with this bike, and I'll get into that a little bit later maybe. But good guy. We lost him recently to cancer, which is a shame. I truly miss him. The kid Aaron works here. He's been here 5-6 years. He's been a good help. There's been quite a few people come and go, mechanics come and go. But overall, it's been me and my dad, and been kind of the core of it. And my son, he's not a mechanic, but he's very involved, and he helps a lot, and so it's just 3 generations.
How long did it take you to complete this bike from beginning to end?
Well, this bike's got a very unique story because it's so rare and it's so odd. It was a 5-year process of gathering the parts, the restoration, and it's probably been built for a few years now. So, probably pushing it's a 10-year deal right now. But the bike's been done for probably 2 or 3 years.
Could you tell me everything about the 1936 HD Knucklehead?
I mean, everything is there's a lot going on with 36 Knuckleheads. It's a very rare bike. In 36, they did 3 versions. Their early ones, which are basically prototypes. Then they did what they called mid and then late, but mid and late are kind of the same bikes. After 500 or so, they had it figured out, and they were basically the same. However, the first bikes, Harley had a lot of trouble with them, but it's the bike that saved Harley as we know it today. It's an extremely rare bike, extremely special bike with very odd parts, one-off stuff. They say from the time the bike was built to 1937, from 36 to 7, the bike was 90% changed. They look very similar, but the parts in general were changed. It's a very odd bike, and today there might be 50 in existence. Maybe more. I don't know. Maybe 100, but there's not a lot of them, and they're very, very sought after.
Where did the parts come from?
This bike parts came from all over the place. The frame is a great story with the frame, which I'll tell it as quickly as I can. My friend that I mentioned earlier, John Godso, had a bike shop up north in Maine, and he was a peddler just like we all were. We always traded, and he ended up working with me later as I spoke. But prior to that, he had a partner up north, and they worked together for years, and they always found a lot of stuff. They scrounged a lot of bikes and built stuff and what have you. And John had this frame brought to him by somebody that found it in a salvage yard. And the frame in the salvage yard, this is a story as John tells it, the frame in the salvage yard was stuck so that all you could see is the 2 back tail pieces, which are these pieces right here. And they were stuck in like this in a scrap pile. And they were hanging out so that the guy understood and knew that they were Harley, but he didn't know what year it was, he didn't know any of that stuff. And so what he did was, he bought the bike, the frame, we bought the frame, and he brought it to my friend John Godso, and John took and purchased the frame from him, knowing what it was. And then he in turn contacted me with the frame, and it was in dire need of work. But he knew that it was a 1-year only frame, that it was super rare, and it was just a blessing that it was pulled out of this pile of scrap. And there was like a ton of scrap on it. They had to basically move a ton of scrap to get the frame out so that they could acquire it. And the frame, they bought the frame for $300, and they sold it to John. As John tells the story, they sold it to him for $500-ish, and I paid him considerably more for it because he knew what it was. The colors on this bike are dust gray and royal buff, and those are factory colors, and I'm glad we touched that. Those colors were purchased, the paint was purchased from a guy named John Pierce, who is an absolute expert on vintage motorcycle paint. He's also a friend, and he helps us on a lot of our restorations. These colors are on the money. They came from original paint parts, and so there's no variance to them. They're right. And like I said, John's is a real study to paints. Beyond the actual colors of the bike was done with the correct decals. It's done with the correct gold striping. It's also done with the correct color stripings, which offset the colors, the base colors. A little tidbit on this paint, the factory, when they did the gold striping on the bikes, they shellacked over the gold striping, and they also shellacked over the decals. The paint and the striping on this bike was done exactly as the factory did it. And that's just a little tidbit on the level that this bike is done at.
Did John Pierce paint the bike?
John Pierce did not paint the bike. A gentleman that worked here worked with me, and he and I painted it. His name was Scotty Goodwin. Scotty's gone now. We lost him quite a few years ago. A real craftsman and a friend, good guy, very, very talented body guy, but he's the one that painted it.
What makes it different than other restored knuckleheads?
Well, the level, we were very, very blessed with, there was people involved in this bike. Shout out to Mark Wall in Tampa, Florida, craftsman. His knowledge on these early knuckleheads is superior to anybody that I know. He's restored probably 15 or 20 of them himself personally. I became friends with him years ago, and he was good enough to share the information that he's acquired over the years from taking apart original bikes and what have you. Even there's, I say this, nobody get mad at me, but there's national judges that aren't aware of what's correct and what is incorrect with some of these early bikes. They're that odd, they're that rare, and the pieces are that rare. Mark Wall was a real help. I remember one time I sent him a picture. We used to do it through pictures, and I sent him a picture of the transmission, which I had finished restoring with help from my friend John Godso also. And we had finished restoring it, and to what we had thought was correct. And it was, the transmission was solid, and it worked properly and all that. And we had it on the bench, and I took a picture of it and sent it down to my friend Mark in Florida, and he commenced to massacring our cosmetic work, and he caused me about 2 weeks worth of work to fix the things that were incorrect, which again were just cosmetics, and then we put it all back together right, and sent him pictures, and he okayed it at that point, and then it went into the bike, and we did that with a lot of other parts on the bike as well, and not just him. There's some other people that were involved that were very helpful, because the knowledge is so limited because there's so few bikes.
I understand the engine was built by the late John David Godso of Cumberland, Maine. Can you tell me a little bit about John and why this engine is so special? Yeah,
Johnny was my partner for years and a good friend. And yes, he helped me work on this bike quite a bit. The motor, he was a very, very good mechanic. Johnny could make anything run. A better mechanic that way than I am. And he was very helpful on this bike, particularly the motor. He built the motor with me, or I should say I assisted him, because he was a very good motor guy. The pieces are correct, the hardware is correct, all the stuff is date coded. Really, really nice job, and quality. Everything about it's quality.
This says a lot about my husband and Dino and the relationship that they had. When my husband knew he was going to lose his battle with his cancer, he went to Dino and he said, "Dino, Jenny's going to need you. And I want you to help her with my collection that I have, and take care of her." And to the letter of his word, Dino honored, out of concern for me and care for John and the relationship they had, overwhelmingly took the task at hand and helped me sell a life's collection of antique motorcycle parts, mostly Harley-Davidson, but Indian. And those were like his children to him. He had spent a good deal of his adult life acquiring things of interest. And Dino was remarkable in his efforts to honor his friendship with me and his business/friendship with John. It just was remarkable. And that's why I came today, to kind of go full circle with my husband's friendship with him and a little bit of his legacy, and brought my son with me to kind
Him
of
and Dino
see.
were good buddies.
They were the best.
A riot.
They were
I loved
best.
hanging out with them.
Good
Some of the best times
old-fashioned.
of my life were spent with you and Dad.
Yep,
Good times.
excellent man, both of them.
My role here is many things. There's a few businesses ran out of this one shop, and I kind of help my father with all the businesses. And one of the businesses that is ran out of the shop here is motorcycles, and I'm not really mechanical. However, I do help him restore antique vintage motorcycles. And yeah, it's not something I do every day. But when he does need help, I'm there to help him.
This was kind of my first experience of a bike this level, so I got to have hands in a little bit of everything. They had done some of the major repairs on the bent parts prior to me coming on, but this was one of the bikes that was in restoration right when I came part of the team here. So I got to have a chance in a little bit of everything, and mostly final assembly.
This bike.
Special 1936, first year of the Knucklehead. It is the holy grail of what Harley did. It's the beginning of the big twin. It's got the style, and every part on it is specific to 1936. It was kind of their year to learn about how these bikes were ridden. They made modifications throughout the 30s and 40s to make them a little bit stronger, but the unique things from the nuts and bolts, the floorboards, the wheel hubs, the actual wheels on the bike, the transmission. It's the small bits that you don't normally see when you're going to look at the bike. Everyone notices the big things, the headlight, the front end, but when you're getting into the fasteners, the style of hub on the wheel, it's all the very small details that really make this thing stand out at what it is, being a true 36.